February 2nd or February 9th, 2022. I will begin by reading the announcement that I, Amy Berry, Chair of the Planning Commission, hereby determine that the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic conditions existing in Salt Lake City, including, but not limited to, the elevated number of cases, that meeting at an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who would be present. With that, while you guys still work on some technical issues, we can jump into the administrative part, and that is first the report of the chair. And hopefully you all noticed in your agenda was a discussion that I wanted to bring to the commissioners with regards to initiating a petition for the planning division to look at removing ADUs from the conditional use process. I hope you all saw that in the agenda. I'm not looking for a lengthy discussion right now, more of just a yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, no, that doesn't. This would just be initiating a petition. It would then go to the planning division and they would do all the work they do for the public engagement process. And then, it would go through the motions, ultimately landing at the city council. But I'd like to just gauge where other commissioners feel about that potential to initiate a petition.
Amy, I was thrilled to see this in my packet. Thank you so much for taking that initiative. I have felt that given they are conditional use, this is not a good use of commissioner time to go through every single one. And I trust our planning staff. Our planning staff are professionals. They're excellent at their jobs. So I really don't feel these need to come in front of the planning commission.
Okay. And I would just clarify, the only ones that come before us are those that are in SR zones. Any other zones, like I live in an RMF 35 zone, it would be administratively done. So we don't see all of them, but it would kind of make them all equal is what this would do. Thank you, Andrew. Any other initial thoughts from commissioners?
I just want to jump in and say that just basically carbon copy what Andrew just said, that I agree with the proposal, the petition.
Okay.
As do I. I would support pursuing that zone amendment.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
Well.
Amy, does that remove the public comment period from the process?
Yeah, they would be all done administratively, and so maybe Wayne can pipe in on what then that process would be for the public outreach that staff does.
Yeah, so maybe does notice still go to the neighbors and to the community council, and do they still?
It wouldn't go to the community council because it would be something over the counter, so to speak. But
it
Wayne
does
wants
now,
to
right?
pipe in, and
It does now, right, Amy? But it wouldn't
if it's in an SR zone, yes.
So
But I think, yeah, Wayne, clarify.
It's not, so basically the way that it works is ADUs, and this only applies to ADUs in accessory buildings, which are detached buildings from the house. In single-family residential districts require conditional use approval. All other districts, they're permitted uses. So what this would do is this would be a study. This would be the planning commission initiating a petition to make all ADUs everywhere in the city permitted uses. So they would not go through the conditional use process. And then it's just a standard building permit. So there was a question about notification. There wouldn't be notification. They'd be allowed, just like somebody could build their single family home. If it complies with all of the codes, they could get a building permit for that.
Okay, thank you. If someone is inclined in the Dropbox, there is a motion wording to initiate this petition. Again, it will then go back to planning staff and they'll do the public engagement as they do for anything, and then it'll come back to us. There'll be a public hearing associated with it, and we would make a recommendation to the city council, who would be the ultimate deciders.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, go ahead, Andra.
Give it half a sec while it opens the file.
Yes, no problem.
I move that the Planning Commission initiate a petition to update the ADU regulations of the city in order to make all ADUs permitted uses and make other necessary changes to do so, including changes to comply with Utah code changes adopted in 2021 and clarifying applicable standards so they can be administered as permitted uses.
I'll second that.
Okay. I have a motion from Andra and a second from Mike. Let's go ahead and take a vote. Adrian,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Andra,
Yes.
John,
Yes,
Andres.
I will vote yes.
Okay, thank you all. That just gets the ball rolling. We'll look forward to that when it is ready to come back to us. Marina's not here tonight, so we have no report of the vice chair. Do we have a report from the director, Wayne?
Nothing to report tonight. Thanks.
Okay. Then we'll move on to the first item on our agenda, which
Madam
is,
Chair, this is
Yeah.
Nick.
Oh.
Sorry, I was just here for that first part, but I do have something to report for the Planning Commission. And I think it's maybe the commission is aware of this or not, but as you know, we've been going through a number of staff changes, and for the first time in probably about 15 months, we are going to be fully staffed starting in 2 weeks. And the big announcement that I wanted to make is that we have, so many of you know Joel Patterson, who retired on December 31st, who was our zoning administrator, and that's a really important position for our city. And we have filled that. We're fortunate enough that we were able to fill that with Mayara Lima, who many of you have been on the Planning Commission for a couple of years may remember. She was a planner in our office. She's a native Portuguese speaker and fluent in Spanish and English as well, and actually was an architect in Brazil prior to coming to the United States. So I want to let the Planning Commission know that we have that position filled, and that does impact some of what you see, because the zoning administrator is the person who is charged with making most of the decisions about how the zoning code applies to things. So just wanted to throw that out. And
I can still hear you, just can't see you
Okay.
anymore.
I've lost my connection completely, so I think. So that's all I had. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Nick, and congratulations to Mayara. I remember her well, so I look forward to that. Okay, moving on to the agenda. Our first item is the consent agenda, which includes a time extension request as well as approval of last meeting's minutes. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mike and a second from Adrian. Go ahead and take a vote. Andreas?
I will vote yes.
Thank you. Andra?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
John?
Yes,
Mike?
Yes.
And Adrian?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next up is the public hearing portion of the agenda. Our first item up is Stanton Avenue, additional building and wall height. This is case number PLN PCM 2021-00976. And the planner tonight on this is Amanda.
Hi, thank you. Can you see my screen? Just make sure.
Yes, I can.
Lovely. All right, I'll get going. This is a special exception request on Stanton Avenue for additional building and wall height. It's the address is 321 East Stanton Avenue. The applicants Kevin and Michael Fairbanks have requested special exception approval for additional building and wall height. The proposal is to build 4 single-family attached units measuring approximately 33 feet tall with a wall height of approximately 28 feet. Staff is recommending approval of the petition. The subject property is located on an interior block dead-end street that's nearly 7,000 square feet in size. So once subdivided, it would permit 4 single-family attached units sitting on their own 1,500 square foot lot. The property is in the SR3 Special Development Pattern Residential Zoning District, which permits buildings with a pitched roof to have a overall building height of 28 feet, or they can be the average height of the other principal buildings on the block face. Maximum wall height in the zone is 20 feet for pitched roofs or flat roofs. Additional building and wall height may be granted through the special exception process if the proposal meets the general special exception standards and if the proposed building height is in keeping with the development pattern on the block face. Here's some renderings or some drawings of the proposal, both the front and the rear elevation as well as the side. The applicant has stated that the proposed height will accommodate the off-street parking, which will be lost when the existing parking lot on site is redeveloped. The additional height also allows the structure to have an asphalt roof, which the applicant stated cannot be used if the pitch is less than 3/12. To mitigate the impacts of the additional height, the building has increased side yard setbacks. So while reviewing this request, staff considered the 2 definitions referred to in the SR3 section of code, which allows for additional height, which are block face and development pattern. Block face is defined as all the lots facing one side of a street between 2 intersecting streets. The definition of block face does not clearly define how to measure the allowable height or setbacks of properties on a street that do not sit between 2 intersecting streets, such as Stanton Avenue, which is considered a dead end. So because Stanton Avenue does not have a block face as defined in code, there's also no development pattern to consider as code instructs us to do while reviewing height or setback exceptions in the SR3 zoning district. And the third thing I reviewed were the recent administrative interpretations. So 2 recent interpretations determined that properties on a dead-end street are not subject to a development pattern as defined in code. Because Stanton Avenue is a dead end, averaging the height and front yard setbacks of properties on the same side of the street is not applicable. And because the property is not within a recorded subdivision plat that specifies allowable height or setbacks, it is subject to the maximums or minimums listed in code. So based on the definitions and the interpretations, staff determined that the maximum allowable building height for the subject property is 28 feet unless special exception approval is granted. And then the additional building height may be granted if the proposal is compatible with the existing scale, development pattern, and character of buildings on both sides of Stanton Avenue, as well as the surrounding properties. And then staff also reviewed the general special exception standards, but really focused on the compatibility with surrounding development. So as I stated before, the subject property is an SR3 zoning district, which is a medium density zone. It's outlined in red. It sits between 500 and 600 south and 400 and 300 east. The purpose of the SR3 zone is to provide a variety of housing types, which are in scale with the development located with interior portions of city blocks. This property is unique because it's surrounded by zoning that does allow for taller by right building heights. The residential mixed-use zone, which is just directly west of the subject property, allows a 75-foot maximum or up to 125 feet with a design review approval. And then the residential office zone to the north allows a 60-foot maximum unless it's next to a zoning district with a greater maximum building height, such as the RMU. Then the maximum is 90 feet. And then also the other 2 zones that are surrounding the property are residential multifamily 35, so it's a maximum height of 35 feet, and residential multifamily 45, so a maximum of 45 feet. So I reviewed the surrounding zoning district standards as well as the existing development pattern. The north side of Stanton Avenue only has 3 other existing structures. 2 of them are 2 stories and 1 is a really short building. And the single family home directly east of the subject property is approximately 30 feet tall. And then the south side of Stanton Avenue consists of historic bungalows that were built in the early 1900s. Here's some photos of the subject property on the top of the page. Right now it's a legally existing non-complying fourplex. And the parking lot is where many of the residents on Stanton Avenue park, but that's part of the subject property and would be removed. And on the bottom of the screen, there's a 60-foot tall apartment building directly west of the subject property. And also there's a dwelling on the corner of Stanton Avenue and 300 East, which is taller in height. And then here's photos of the north side of Stanton Avenue. The 3 existing structures are on the top, and then photos of the streetscape are on the bottom. So you can see this, the scale does differ between very low structures as well, and then moves up to about 60 feet. And then here are photos of the south side of Stanton Avenue. All of the homes on this side are the small bungalows. The lots are small in size. They were developed in the early 1900s. There are no garages, so people use on-site or are on-street parking or the existing parking lot. I also want to touch on some design iterations. We worked really closely with the applicant, and they came back multiple times based on feedback from staff. So the original request was for a building height of 40 feet, and I have the 2. It's hard to see with the elevations, but the 2 smaller elevations are the older proposals. So both proposals had smaller windows. The base started out as rock siding, and the proposals differ from 40 feet. So that was an ask of 12 feet of the additional building height for a pitched roof. And then the second iteration was for a flat roof of 32 feet, but that was still asking for 12 feet of additional building height since the maximum wall height in the zone is 20 feet. And neither one of the proposals included balconies, and the porch was pretty much non-existent. It was just a little overhang. So the staff, so the applicant revised their plans to include a front porch which reflects the bungalows on the street, and balconies so that it complements the bungalows. And then they're also using thin brick siding on the ground floor to match the existing brick facades. And as I mentioned earlier, the side yard setbacks have been increased to approximately 7 feet to provide a buffer. And the setbacks in the zone are 4 feet if next to single family, and otherwise there's no setback required. So while the overall building height is taller than the existing buildings on Stanton Avenue, it does provide a transition between the by right zoning and then the buildings on abutting properties between the smaller bungalows and the 60-foot tall multifamily building. The applicant really did a good job of working with staff to provide pedestrian-oriented elements on the building, which I believe reduces the perceived scale. And then we also went back and forth on if rear loaded parking was a possibility, but the site is not wide enough to accommodate that, although it is preferable. But other than that, they did change their design a lot. So overall, staff finds that the proposal is compatible with surrounding development, meets the intent of the SR3 zoning district, and will not have a substantial negative impact on surrounding properties. And therefore, staff is recommending approval. Please let me know if you have questions, and I can go back to the renderings.
All right, thank you, Amanda. Commissioners, any questions for staff? Okay, with that, I see both of the applicants, Michael and Kevin Fairbanks, are in the participant list. If you can unmute yourselves, Kevin and Mike.
Mike, do either of you need control to where you, or do you want to present something on the screen?
Yes, yeah, this is Mike. I was going to present just a PowerPoint for what the allotted time you give me.
There you go.
Let's see. Share. It won't let me share.
Give it just a second. Sometimes it takes a Second to get over there. Let me try it again here.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Okay, Mr. Fairbanks, you have up to 10 minutes for your presentation.
Okay, let me just make sure I can see this. Can you guys see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, just Amanda, thanks, did a good job. We worked very closely with Amanda. We went through several revisions of this. We did want to get it right. So hopefully at the end, you'll see that, you know, we tried to hit that happy balance to find the right project for this street, right structure. But just real quick, this is high level, but on the right side, that's Library Square over here. On the other side is that newer home, just to give you a high level view. The highlighted area is where this building will go. That didn't work. There we go. Just another shot of the street. I think one thing I do want to call out on this street is the height. Amanda, the height on that, we do have benchmark, did our engineering, but that is a 63-foot tall building. I think that's important to note. That's looking west. That's the parking lot she was talking about. Looking east, just to give you a view of that, very similar to what I think Amanda was showing there as well. There's that property. I think the important thing on this property right here, this newer home, is that newer home is 30 feet. So it's already 2 feet above what code allows. And so I think that's important to keep in mind as we move forward. Just FYI, you know, just a note, you guys are probably familiar with this. This building down here is 54 feet. You know, the Library Square, like I said, is 63 feet. So in the neighborhood, there are some big buildings, larger structures. This sketch here, the key thing I think that this shows, that we wanted to show, is this is to scale. If you look at the dashed dotted line going across, that's what the new structure will look like. The other structures right here in the middle, that'll be taken down. Gives you an idea of scale, size, and how it might fit in between those two buildings. I think the other thing that is important, being that this building's 63 feet, it allows a nice smooth transition, like Amanda said, down to the home to the east. And again, I think the other part that I wanted to call out on this slide is the home on the east is 30 feet tall. And so if you look at the scale here, you're going from 30 feet, we are asking for 30 feet, we are asking for 33 feet. So the difference between the 30 and the 33 really here is 3 feet difference between these two buildings. This is on the block face as well. She's already showed you the renderings. I'm going to talk just a minute here about some of the renderings, some of the things that we did, highlighted, working with the planner, Amanda, to kind of accommodate some of the nice things that are on the street and to highlight some of the street values. That's the front, the back, pretty standard. Let me just end up and just kind of go through some of these. We've owned this property, me and my brother Kevin, we're the developers, for 30 years. We know what goes on the street. There's been parking issues on that street for many years. There still is parking. You know, the bungalows park on the street. They don't have any off-street parking. We have had off-street parking, and that's been a nice thing to have. We want to continue to have that. So that was important for us in designing this structure. Not only, you know, when people come to rent, one of the first things they want to know how much you're renting your place for. Number two is, do you have off-street parking? And yeah, do you have off-street parking? Do you have secure parking? So we feel like this is a nice amenity that we want to keep. Bullet number 2, asking for 5 feet height exception. Again, just to refresh, just to go over what I just said. The east house, we will be 3 feet higher, 36 inches higher than the east house. We are 30 feet below Library Square, the building to the west side. I know it's not on the block face, but it is part of the neighborhood, and it's a big building. Again, it provides a nice transition from the large to the small structures. Actually, I think it integrates and brings the larger and the smaller. I think it just makes that street look better from the street view. Additional height was required for increased setbacks. Amanda touched on those a little bit, but the bungalows are set up, their setback is 5 feet. we designed this to be 7 feet, and then about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, we found out because it's a dead end, we needed to be 10 feet off. So we went, readjusted everything, pulled in another 3 feet off the depth of the building. So we are, our backs, or our offset setback on the front yard is 10 feet. The additional height was also needed to be able to provide the off-site parking that we wanted to provide. We also wanted to find balance between it not being too big, not too small, but comfortable living space. The porch and patio came in late, and that was, I'll touch on those in just a minute. But those are 5 feet deep. That was an additional 5 feet that we actually took off the building as well. And so really, we've taken almost 8 feet off the front or off the structure itself to be able to accommodate some of the nice things that we've actually added here. I'll talk about in just a minute. Just real quick on the 312 pitched roof. Your roofing manufacturers, if it's less than 312, they don't guarantee their product. And so it was important for us. If you go less than that, you're kind of stuck with limited materials. More than likely, you have to have a metal roof. There's no metal roofs in the neighborhood. We want to align with what's in the neighborhood. So it was important for us to be able to get to that 312 pitched roof, which caused us to go from 32 to 33 feet. That's the 33 feet that we came up with. We've added gables to the roof line to complement other roof patterns on the street. Added ports to complement the design and structures across the street and the balconies to increase transparency and pedestrian interactions. Added pedestrian-oriented elements and setbacks, reducing any perceived scale or concerns. Just to note, before you'll even enter the garage on this property, from the back side of the sidewalk, it will be 15 feet before you even go into the garage. So, you know, we're not twice as tall as the bungalows, but yet we're almost 3 times the setback of what the bungalows are on the street. Some things on the street, some buildings on the street don't even have setbacks. The fiveplex at the very end of the street on the east side sits right on the street. And granted, it was built a long time ago, but I think the last thing I really just want to just state here and wrap up is, you know, we are compatible with the surrounding development. We think that the size, we feel like the design, we went back and forth with many revisions with Amanda on this, looked at the suggestions. And I think the key thing is we listened and we made changes. This has been a very long process. We think we've come up with a very good design, something that's very nice for the neighborhood, adds value to the neighborhood. And I just, you know, these that I put asterisks on these bullet points. The proposal meets the general special exception standards of approval and is in compliance with the purpose of the SR3 zone, which is to promote medium density development and preserve the character of the existing neighborhoods. And we think we've done that. We really do. We've gone to a lot of effort. Developer, planner work closely together to capture and implement key values of Stanton Avenue. And with that, that's happy to answer any questions you guys have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fairbanks. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, hearing none. If you would hold tight, Mr. Fairbanks, I'll open up the public comment period, and if anything comes up, I'll allow you time to address any comments that may be raised.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to open up the public comment period. If you are in attendance, and since we're having some difficulties, we give a little extra time for trying to accommodate this. But in the lower right-hand part of your screen, there is a hand that looks like that. If you would hit that button, it raises your hand and lets us know that you do wish to speak on this item. And I see no hands, but I will defer to Wayne.
Yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a cluster for a minute. I apologize.
It's okay.
Kind of first of all, for those of you that are in attendance, if possible, if you look on your participants panel, you may need to look for a button that says participants and open it up. It'll be a panel with participants. And then under your name, there will be a phone icon, and this will allow you to request control of the audio. If you have that and you can do it, go for it. Otherwise, I'm going to have to kind of move everybody over and see if people actually want to speak. So there's Jennifer Nielsen.
Wayne,
Yes.
can you take back control of sharing?
I'm sorry.
Presenter rights? Can you take back the control of presenter rights? There we go.
Okay. Jennifer Nielsen, is this something that you would like to speak on? You can go ahead and speak now. Jennifer? Jennifer Nielsen, is this something you'd like to speak on? Jennifer?
Where are you seeing Jennifer? I don't see her in the attendees list.
I just moved her over to a participant to see if we can get, allow folks to speak.
I don't see her there either. Did she hang out?
Maybe. Okay, let's try.
I don't see Jennifer Nielsen at all.
Hey, Judy, are you able to speak? Judy Short? Judy?
Hey, Wayne, put her back in the attendee list, because when you put Jennifer back in the attendee list, I noticed that little headphone icon popped up. And I don't know if it's because she clicked on the right button or if it has anything to do with switching people back and forth.
Now I see Jennifer Nielsen.
Jennifer, is this the topic you'd like to speak on?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can hear you now.
Oh,
Jennifer,
yay,
if you would just state your name for the record, and then you have 2 minutes and we can all hear you.
okay, great. My name is Jennifer Nielsen. Hello, everyone. I live across the street. I own the cute little yellow house, one of the bungalows. I want to say to Mike and Kevin, I really appreciate and I guess approve, not that you need my approval, but I like the redesigns. I think they are very considerate of the neighborhood. My biggest concern is has always been the parking. The homes on the south side, as Mike said, there's no garages, there's no driveways. We've always used the street parking. This will reduce the availability of parking that sometimes everyone on the street use, and I know they'll provide parking for the residents, which is fantastic. But if they have guests, there could be another cluster. I'm wondering if the Fairbanks would be willing to help me petition to the city to get that street parking, to permit parking, so that the people who are actually living on the street can have a place to put their cars. It would be nice and convenient.
I will pose that question after the public comment period. So
thank you. Yeah, I don't know if anyone here can help with that, but that's my biggest concern is just the people living on the street have access to getting to their homes. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, if anybody else wishes to speak, you should, even if we're having audio problems, you should be able to click that hand to raise it. It lets us know you want to speak. And Jennifer, now that you're done, if you could click that hand again, it unraises it and helps us manage the list a little bit easier.
And Madam Chair, just a reminder, if people are having any audio issues, you can send an email in to planningcomments@slc.gov.com, and we will read those into the record.
It's planning.comments@slcgov.com, right?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Thank you for that reminder. I meant to say that and I forgot.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands, and we have not received any emails on this.
We did have a comment that came in our Dropbox earlier, but we had access to that earlier. So, okay, seeing none other hands raised, I will close the public comment period, and bring it back to the commission. Mr. Fairbanks, if you want to just take a minute to address that question from Jennifer, I'll allow that.
Yeah, no, I get it, Jennifer. I appreciate the comments. We agree. I'm happy to help with any kind of parking issues. We're very familiar with them. One thing I didn't state, we do have off-street parking there. We've designed that as part of that design is for a tandem. So we're going to be able to go, we can't go 2 cars wide, but we can go 2 cars deep. But it doesn't provide any more on road parking, which that's kind of tough to do because Stanton just has the one-way parking and it's all parallel parking, but we're happy to help any way we can to help resolve some of those issues. That's one of the reasons why parking was so important or in the design of the new project is because we knew about the parking issues.
Okay, I will look forward to, you can reach out to Jennifer as she lives there and see what you can do with that. Commissioners, any last comments or discussion to the applicant or staff? Okay, hearing none. I'm open for a motion from commissioners.
Amy, I'll make a motion.
Okay, was that Adrian?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Based on the findings listed in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission approve the special exception request PLN PCM 2021-00976 as proposed.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion from Adrian and a second from Mike. Let's go ahead and take a vote on this. John?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Andreas?
I will vote yes.
Okay, Mike?
Yes.
Andra?
Yes.
And Adrian?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Mr. Fairbanks. You're good to go. All right, moving
Thank
on.
you.
You're welcome. Moving on, our second agenda item is the Harvey at approximately 501, 511, and 515 East and 2700 South. This is case number PLN PCM 2021-01092 and PLN PCM 2021-01254. And the planner for this project tonight is Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, I can.
Great, thank you. So this is a plan development and design review for the Harvey located at the northeast corner of the intersection of 500 East and 2700 South. The applicant is requesting plan development and design review approvals. You can see the location of the property on the right. It is located on the north side of 2700 South and to the east of 500 East. And the Nibley Park Golf Course is to the south, and the 2 commercial properties to the west are in South Salt Lake. To give you a brief overview of the project, the properties are located in the CN or Neighborhood Commercial Zoning District. The Sugar House Master Plan is applicable to this area. The subject property includes 3 existing parcels that have a total area of approximately 18,000 square feet. The proposal is for a mixed-use building with 1 commercial unit and 14 residential units. The commercial unit is located at the corner. 8 of the residential units are townhouse style. You can see the individual entries in the image on the right, and then 6 are apartment style units. The exterior materials are primarily brick veneer, and then there are some areas of fiber cement siding and stucco. There's an enclosed garage that uses an automated parking system. 29 parking spaces are proposed, including 1 ADA space. The applicant anticipates preliminary and final condo plots that would consolidate the existing parcels and set up condominium units for the commercial and residential units. This slide shows the site plan. On the left, the layout of the first floor with the individual units is visible. Access to the parking is from an alley located north of the site. The right shows the overall site plan, including the elements requested as part of the plan development and design review requests. With the engineering submittal, the applicant identified that the portion of the alley along their frontage would be improved with asphalt. There are currently 2 buildings on the site. One is a historically commercial building that is located on the corner, and the other is a single-family home that is located on the easternmost parcel. To place the proposal in context, the graphic on the right shows the zoning map. The 3 parcels that are part of the proposal are outlined in yellow. And then to the north and the east are our 1-5000 zone properties with single-family homes. The home to the north is shown on the upper left, and then the home to the east is shown on the bottom left, and it's the residence with the green porch. The applicant has requested several modifications from the standards through the plan development and design review processes, and then these zoning ordinance sections are on the slide. As for the requested modifications, the plan development request is for several items. The first is for encroachments in the rear and buffer yards. The Sr3 Zoning District requires a 10-foot rear yard and a 7-foot buffer yard, and these proposed encroachments are shown in the upper right graphic. The westernmost is a utility transformer. The most recent revised plans show this extending into the corner side yard, and one of the conditions of approval restricts this to the rear yard. The request also includes the trash enclosure, driveway, and a generator that are also proposed for the rear and buffer yards. And staff supports these requests. While there are several encroachments proposed for the rear yard, this is preferable to placing them in the front or corner side yards, or potentially in the small park strips. Additionally, the buffer yard is designed to provide additional space between commercial uses and residential properties. And much of this building is devoted to residential uses, and there's a 16-foot alley separating the property from the single-family home to the north. The second request is for additional building height up to 5 feet to accommodate the sunken garden level patios and stairs. While these are located approximately 5 feet below the street grade, the city measures building height from, quote, the average elevation of the finished grade at each face of the building to the highest point of the coping on a flat roof. In this case, that means measuring the height from the lower garden level to the coping of the flat roof. And the applicant has included a 1.5-foot parapet in the height as shown and measured from the garden level patio to the top of this parapet. So the average elevations are shown on the plans for each elevation, and they range from 26 feet to 29.8 feet. And staff supports this request. The majority of the building will meet the 25-foot height maximum from the street level. The request for additional height is needed to accommodate the below-grade sunken patios and the average height calculation that includes them. Additionally, the height provided by the applicant includes a parapet that extends 1.5 feet above the flat roof, and the city has an exception that allows for a 5-foot mechanical equipment parapet wall, which can apply in this situation. The final request is for an increase in the maximum lot size from the 16,500 square feet permitted to the approximately 18,000 square foot area of the combined 3 properties, and staff also supports this request. The proposal is for an additional 1,500 square feet, which is approximately a 10% increase over what is permitted, which is a relatively small increase. The purpose of the Sr3 district is to provide for small, low-scale commercial uses that are within and serve residential neighborhoods. And this proposal includes 1 small commercial unit, and its design is pedestrian-oriented, which is consistent with the purpose of the zone. There are 2 design review requests. The first is for modification of the required front and corner side yards to accommodate the sunken garden level patios. And as detailed earlier, these extend below street grade, and they also extend into 5 feet into the required front and corner side yards. The face of the building does not extend into this area, but the patios, as well as the associated stairs and railings for them, are within this required yard. And staff supports this request as the proposed building does not extend into this required area and will have greater setbacks than the existing commercial building on the property. The second request is for the steel canopies that extend 2 feet into the required front and corner side yard setbacks. These extend from above the windows and entries to the building. And for residential properties, there's an exception that allows for this by right. And staff supports this as it creates shade, shelter from the elements, and provides visual and pedestrian interest on the facade. As identified in the key considerations, the proposal is consistent with the city's adopted planning documents. The proposed mixed-use development adds medium-density housing options in a type that is not common for the area. Additionally, the proposal has pedestrian-friendly elements that are consistent with the desired policies in the master plan. As far as the public process, staff sent notice of the proposal to the Community Council, and the Sugar House Land Use Committee met in December to discuss the proposal. They also submitted a letter which is included in the staff report. Several residents have submitted comments and have expressed concern with elements of their proposal, and their comments are included with the staff report. Parking and its access was the main concern expressed by the residents, and there is also one additional public comment that's been placed into the Dropbox. And staff recommends approval of the proposal with the conditions identified in the staff report and on the slide. The applicant is here and has a presentation and is available to answer questions. Are there questions for staff at this point?
I have some questions, but I'll bring it to the staff or commissioners first if they have anything they want to ask you. No? Okay, then I'll kick in. So let me clarify based on what you just said. So the height of the building wouldn't change if we don't grant the height exception. Basically, the sunken patio would be eliminated, correct?
So I think that if the sunken patios would be eliminated, they wouldn't have the lower area that you see there with the doors and this kind of lower area here. And so I think they would need to reconfigure those units to accommodate for that change.
Guess what I'm really getting at is the height of the building wouldn't change in terms of what any neighbor sees it as. Like this is not an extra 5 feet in it going up. It's not an extra 5 feet of it going down.
Right. It's based on how the city measures height from this this finished grade at that sunken patio level.
So I guess I want to clarify for the neighbors that granting an additional 5 feet is not going to change the actual height above ground. That is by right, they have the ability to do that. This is literally below ground for the sunken patios. Is that correct?
Right. I think the graphic on the screen now illustrates that a little bit better. Hopefully it's big enough that you can see that. But from this street level here, and so this would be this would be at the corner. This is the 500 East facade. So it would be 26 feet tall from the corner here. And then when you measure it from that sunken garden level patio, it's 31 feet 4 inches. And then that 26 feet tall, that includes that 1.5 foot parapet above the roof.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. And then I just want you to make a brief comment on your discussion with engineering. I think it was David Jones, just to let everyone know that you did speak with them and what that conversation was. It was in your staff report, but I just want it for the record verbally.
Sure. Let me go ahead and go back to a slide that shows the site plan a little bit better. This might be helpful, I'm not sure. So you can see that there's this existing alley here, and in the applicant's submittal with the engineering plans, they identified that they would be improving the alley along their frontage with additional asphalt, and that's included as a condition of approval. And there had been a request to have additional improvements made on the alley as it extends further to the east. And that's not something that the city can require them to do.
Right. And so, though I think you also said in your staff report, there were a lot of speculations of what, improving like half of an alley would do. And your discussions that came out in your staff report indicated that engineering had no concerns that aligned with any of the speculation that was coming up from the comments. Is that correct?
Sure, right. The comment, I think, was basically identifying that the development should not create or exacerbate any issues that might be present in that area as far as runoff or anything along those lines.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to clear up and have for the record. So thank you. Any other questions for Sarah from commissioners?
I just want to sort of ask a little bit about this parking situation more generally, because this has come up repeatedly in concerns about development. And I'm wondering, I think the last public comment on the previous project suggested a very good idea of maybe we should have permit parking in certain areas. I like this idea because I think what we want to do is sort of push people on the margin to take a trip by some mode of transit other than a car. And I think if you make parking just a smidgen more difficult, that might be, you know, if you're talking about somebody who, oh, well, it would be a 15-minute walk, or I could go and drive and I'd have to, you know, find parking, and I know that's going to be difficult. So I'd love to hear Sarah's comments on whether that's feasible at all, this street parking solution.
I don't know too much about the permit parking. I think for this particular project, just want to mention that there is a bus stop that's right here in front of the building. It's also, it's at 27th South, and so it's probably, trying to do the math quickly in my head, it's probably about a half a mile to the streetcar line as well. So I think that there are some opportunities for transit in this area as well.
Yeah, I think I am sympathetic to the neighbor's concern that if we don't sort of push the people, I mean, just push them a little bit into making it a little more difficult to park. You know, even myself, sometimes I'm tempted to take a car, even if I know for everybody involved it'd be better if I walked or took transit. Anyway, just something to put out there that I'd love to see permit parking instead of everybody just gets to park wherever they want in the city.
Thanks, Sandra. I think maybe in the future I'll ask for a director report for them to elucidate the existing rules for what goes on for permitted parking, residential permitted parking. So I'll put that on my list to talk to them in the future about. Okay, any other questions for staff? All right, let's move on to the applicant. I think we have David Anderson, who is in the participant or in the yeah, he's in the participants list. Mr. Anderson, do you need presenter rights for a presentation you want to share?
That'd be great. Do you have my audio here?
I do, I hear you. So Wayne can take care of that part.
Okay. And I apologize, I don't see a button for video. I hate to be the person on the screen behind the black box there, but at the moment I'm not seeing that option.
You should be able to actually present now, though.
Yeah, you should be able to share your screen, and your video button would be in the very bottom middle.
Oh, that just popped up as well. I'll start my video.
Good. Well, there you go. Okay. If you
hey, that's me right there. All right. And I'll share my screen.
Share your screen, and then once you get that up and running, you'll have 10 minutes.
Okay, excellent.
Oh, and I can see your screen, so you're good to go.
Okay, let's get this one over here. And just a moment as we move some things around here. Okay. Well, thanks very much for the questions and the comments, and I really appreciate it. It's very apparent that the Planning Commission team has delved into this project, and it is a little bit complex, so we appreciate the effort that went in. And Sarah, excellent job describing the somewhat complex issue here, and I appreciate you taking the time. So a few of the early questions that came in. Permit parking. I am also a fan of permit parking for residential areas. I lived in the Pierpont Lofts a while back, and that was a concern there as well. So for what it's worth, I'm a proponent of that. This project specifically has all off-street parking, so we hope to minimize the parking impact on this area in the neighborhood. So Dave Anderson, principal with Babcock Design Group. I'm joined by Alina Kowalczyk, the lead designer on this project, and really she deserves the credit for this project. She knows it inside and out, and if there are particular questions, I imagine she will jump in and keep me from going astray. In addition, we have Alec Myers and Tyler MacArthur, who are the owners of this project. I'm going to give an introduction to this project, but we really would like to save some time for the two of them, as the owners of this unique property, let them speak to it and give you their very passionate opinions on the project. As we're all familiar, Salt Lake is growing at an unprecedented rate. Over the past few years, Salt Lake Valley has experienced an annual housing deficit of somewhere in the area of 5 digits, and that's annual. That's every year. as a result, we've seen in this area a lot of sort of very towering residential developments come up with the first few floors designated for parking. And the construction of these for rent products typically lead to kind of the lowest construction cost possible, just based on simple economics. Now, as an architect, watching this city city evolve, I've always had a little bit of heartburn, well, considerable heartburn with that approach. That approach is a solution to a problem, which is housing density. This project is not that approach. It's been quite refreshing to work with Alec and Tyler. At every turn, they're really focused on the attention to how to build community here, integrating the form and the design into the fabric of the specific neighborhood. Walking the site and understanding what the impacts would be, both potentially positive and potentially negative. This project is consistent with the Sugar House Master Plan and Plan Salt Lake. And over the past few months, we've worked with Sarah and her team and the Neighborhood Council, trying to modify the plans and incorporate features requested by those entities and also address public comments. In general, this is a small scale, low intensity residential product. These are not those podium projects of 4th South with 2 stories of parking and 4 to 5 to 6 to whatever stories above that. This is intended specifically to meet both the historic and the aesthetic aspects of this neighborhood. Historically, these were 1 to 2 story buildings, primarily made out of brick, and we want to respect that history here. So it's a human scale, right? This is the intent is to have a walkable community here and to have people be able to relate to the scale of the buildings that are adjacent here. This project only consists of 14 units, 15 if you count the commercial unit that's at the corner of the building, which is also sort of the historical use of the site. So there's 1 commercial unit, there's 8 townhouses and 6 apartment style condominiums. And I should say this is a I use the word condominium. This is a for sale product, and that's sort of important. That means a few things. That means that the occupants of these spaces are the owners of this space, and they will, as such, take pride in and take responsibility for the maintenance and upkeep. There's peeling paint. Hey, that's on me. I've got to take care of that. That's not that other guy, that landlord who we're requesting to do some maintenance services here. The not my job aspect is not what this product is about. It's about, let's take care of our own area here and build this community in this neighborhood. And in addition, as a for sale product, the owners are asking people to make a big commitment here, right? This is not, I'm going to rent this for 6 months and then leave, and it doesn't really matter, what the finishes are, what the materials are, how I like this place. We're asking people to, invest to a large degree and call this their home. And as a result, we need to hit a higher point on the market. We need to hit a higher level of materials. You look at this project and it is, 90% brick on the exterior. That's not typical, but that's kind of the approach that we've taken in designing this higher level, next level product in terms of a for sale long-term purchase for individuals moving to this neighborhood. It's built at historic scale. It tried to keep with that character of the neighborhood. And try to minimize the impact of sort of additional development here. There was a lot of talk about parking early on in the conversation, and at significant expense, the owners have decided to go with sort of a novel approach to the parking here. There's no field of parking. There's no exposed parking at all here. All of the parking is enclosed within the building, not screened off, but really actually enclosed within the building. There's a automated parking system that opens onto the alley. So residents would drive into an enclosed area and then onto an automated deck that they will drive onto a specified location, get out of their car, and then the automated system will park the cars for them in a highly dense area so that we can limit the amount of parking or limit the amount of area that's designated for parking, which, you know, as you look at the fabric of our city, boy, wouldn't that be a great thing? Let's limit the amount of asphalt, solar heat gain, the amount of area that's designated just for the automobile. That's really quite a goal of this project. You know, there are, you know, a lot of walkable features and other components to this project, and we could, you know, go on for a long time about the compelling aspects. But
You
what I'd
have
like to
about
do.
2 minutes left. Just like
Perfect. Handing it over to Alec and Tyler right now.
I'll just say something real quick. If you guys can hear me, I'm Tyler MacArthur. Dave just did a great job presenting. I'll hit on two things real quick that Dave hasn't mentioned yet. One is that this is going to be an all-electric building. We believe in sustainable development. One of those things is not using fossil fuels on site. We like that we're trying at considerable expense to make this an all-electric building, which does require more expensive HVAC systems. But that's just another thing that we're working on. And the second thing that I would point out is to try to keep it consistent with the existing neighborhood. We've actually looked at, we've tried to match the brick color to the traditional brick colors that are used in Utah residential construction, or that were used, you know, 100 years ago. And we've even gone so far as to look at the exact way the arches were built on the exact the building that's on site, and we tried to mimic those arches above the windows. So just two examples of things that we're trying to do to make sure that this is a very thoughtful development. So Alec, you're last if there's anything that Dave or I have not mentioned.
I think you guys have hit it almost on the head. I think, you know, Tyler and I are you know, kind of young and you know, tend towards idealistic visions. And sometimes, you know, when the rubber hits the road, you know, you kind of have to readjust. And we've tried our best to stick to some of these original goals, you know, like keeping it for sale and keeping it, you know, relatively consistent with, you know, the history and the current uses of the neighborhood. And, you know, when we set out with the original design sketches with Babcock Design, we really wanted to have as many of these units kind of face the street as possible. We were kind of replicating this, you know, this urban townhouse style that you see in, you know, very charming and desirable neighborhoods of Boston and New York and stuff. And you don't see much of that in Salt Lake. We believe that it's a product that adds a lot to the neighborhood, as well as, you know, not just, you know, for the owners, but it has a lot of spillover effects. And we're really proud of how far we've gotten. And you know, and one thing is to note is that most of the requests that we're going for, they're kind of minor technicalities, right? Like the spirit of the law that we've tried to respect here is, you know, the height of the building which has already been mentioned, is you know, essentially what's allowed by the zoning, and where the building faces sit relative to the street, you know, are essentially by rights, you know. And so most of these minor exceptions have been to hopefully promote better urban design, you know, and give something better to the neighborhood, you know, by allowing these, you know, these patios and these stairwells and trying to route the traffic around off the back, you know, rather than cutting extra curb cuts into 27th South or 5th East.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. That's time for you guys. I appreciate your comments. I'm going to ask commissioners if they have any questions for the three of you at this time. Okay, hearing none.
I have one quick question.
Go ahead.
What type of commercial use are you targeting for the commercial unit? Is that office that you expect, and will that be a condo unit, and would that be sold to a commercial user, or how will you maintain control of that space?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is a condominium unit. It's one of 15, and so it's going to be part of the same condominium owner association, and it's going to be owned by the business that moves in, you know. And so it's hard for us to project, you know, by the time this is being sold a year from now, like who's going to buy it or what their business is. But you know, we've had multiple businesses already reach out and just say, there's nothing like this. I would love to buy this. Everybody's stuck in these leases, they're paying rents, and that they're subject to having that go up or having their business, relocated, as the lease terms become egregious. And as a small business owner, being able to, control your costs, build equity, and, there's also just tax advantages as a small business owner. And so the space is not large. It's about 1,000 square feet or a little over 1,000 square feet, but it'll contain, 2 different entrances off both streets. There will be some storage space and a private bathroom and, some nice attractive windows. It might be a small architecture firm or accounting office. It could be a hair salon. I mean, it's hard for us to know, but yes, it is going to be for sale to the owner of whatever business takes the space.
One other thing to note is that we are not installing restaurant infrastructure. There aren't the ventilation fans or the oil traps that we need, that a restaurant would need. So that's probably the prohibited use that won't be coming in here.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to have you guys hang tight. We'll open the public comment period, and if there are any things that require you to address from the public comments, I'll allow you some time to do that. I'm going to open the public comment period and just give some initial instructions. If you are in attendance, please hit that hand button at the bottom right that indicates that you wish to speak, and we will work through any technical difficulties to make sure you get your voice heard tonight. If the worst case scenario, you submit some written comments via email to planning.comments@slcgov.com. That is being monitored as we speak, and we'll be able to at least read any comments into the record if we can't overcome the audio that we may have difficulties on. We'll begin public comments with the Sugarhouse Community Council, and then we'll open it up to other attendees. This is not a back and forth Q&A, so if you do have questions, that's fine. You'll have 2 minutes to speak. You can say what you want and ask any questions, but I will pose those questions after the public comment period is closed. So they will get addressed, and I'll write them down during your talk. So if we want to go ahead and start, Judy, you are going to be first up.
Right. Can you hear me?
There you go.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. It's an interesting process you have here. I have to say, I really like this project. It looks like the neighborhood commercial that we've had in all our neighborhoods for a long, long time. This one's even brown, like the wonderful building that's been there I bet that building's been there 80 years, selling refrigerators and things like that. Couple of things that we have a little bit of angst about. One is the reduced 5-foot setback in the front due to the gardens on the 2700 south side. The neighbors that live in the houses to the east are upset that breaks their view of the sunset. So we'd really like the developer to rethink that perhaps. The other issue is somewhere in, I don't know where, I heard that the bottom units of those could be sold separately or rented out, sort of like an accessory dwelling unit that they're probably have a separate bathroom and kitchen. And that immediately brings up the issue of parking, because that would mean 3 more cars. And if any of you have gone around the neighborhood, there is no parking on the neighborhood. That's part of why the neighborhood is worried about, if somebody has a guest, where are they going to park? 2 blocks away? So that's just a concern, and I don't know how we deal with that. The other one that bothers me is the alley. I think the city ought to deed the alley to this project. Then you could pave both sides of the alley, and people can go in and out instead of driving in on the asphalt and out on the muddy side. It seems kind of strange. And perhaps make it a one-way alley to make traffic flow more evenly. So I think that's all I really have to say. Parking is
Okay.
always a problem.
Thank you, Judy Short, for the record. Thank you. All right.
Okay, next is Steph and Brandon.
If you would also state your name for the record, and then you can begin your comments, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Steph and Brandon, can you speak? I unmuted you. Okay, they did send in. I'm going to come back to them and see. They also emailed comments.
Okay, let's
We'll come back.
come back to them because we have somebody else, and then we'll give it another try.
How about Daryl Newbold? Daryl, can you speak?
I can. You can hear me?
Yes.
So I'm Daryl Newbold and a longtime resident of the neighborhood. We've been here now over 50 years, and some of the neighbors have been here 60. Our homes are 92 years old, and our concerns are a lot of different concerns. Back in the 30 years ago in 1990, we closed off the alley horizontally, and we worked down and we downzoned the neighborhood to R 1500 and 1700. And so I was surprised when all of a sudden 511 East on 27th South pops up to be commercial. When back then, when we worked through with the attorney's office, we got that the 7th East would be done, the running store and the gas stations, and this little market that used to be on the corner would be the only ones that way. And then when Ken died, all of a sudden now all this has changed when his appliance store went up. Our concern is I've been in the property management business now for 39 years, and this is not going to be an HOA type issue. We have concerns that these homes are going to be 5 and 6 cars per dwelling because of the, 2 family plus 1. And they're only, some of these are only getting 1 car. We've had so many close calls of drivers on 500 East there and 27th. We've had to remark the street, and we had the street department come out for 3 years trying to get that worked out. If you look at the complex just east of us on 27-9 complex on 900 East, the neighborhood now is really concerned because they didn't put enough parking in, and they're parking up on Mark, Lincoln, and Marvin Circle. And the overflow is terrible up there, and the neighbors are complaining. And I checked into that. There's no grass for dogs on this property. Who's going to take care of the snow removal up the alley? And when the trash
That's time, Mr. Newbold. And we did get your comments in the staff report, so we are familiar with the rest of your comments. So thank you. And you want to cycle back to Steph and Brandon?
Yeah, I think they mentioned that they got this figured out. Steph and Brandon, can you speak? Oh, bummer. Okay, well, let's
I think there's a comment in the Q&A. I will restart.
Okay, we'll give them just a minute. Although
let's go ahead. I know we also have an additional email comment to be read. Let's do that and give them, and then maybe move them into the participant list and see if that helps.
Okay, I'll read this email. This is from Lynn Schwartz. Excuse me. This is a development that is a good example of a neighborhood scale project. However, with the rental units on the first floor, there will not be enough parking. Also, the reduced front yard setback is not compatible with the setbacks on the rest of the block and should be rejected. The backyards of several houses to the east will be overlooked by the project, and the requested height will cause privacy issues, so that should not be granted. There also needs to be some mechanism for continued upkeep of the alley, as it will be used by both the project and neighbors. That was from Lynn Schwartz.
Okay. John, are there any other emails you've received?
The only one would be from Stephanie. And so if we can make her and her
Yeah, let's
husband
make her
are
a participant and
that
then
would be
see if
great.
that helps.
I'm going to try this one more. Steph and Brandon, can you speak from where you're at now? Okay, let's give this a shot. Steph and Brandon, can you speak now? Well, it's weird. I can see their mic and everything, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, they're not able to.
Can't hear them.
And they're emailing, and they would like to actually. All right, we're gonna read their.
Yes, let's read their email comments and then note there was extensive email exchanges in our staff report from them in the public comment section. So we've had access to an ongoing discussion they've had with Sarah, as well as whatever they've provided tonight.
They also
Technically,
sent
it looks like we should be hearing them. So I don't see if they have an issue with their microphone, but
Well, they also sent an email in and said, please read in case of audio issues. So I'll go ahead and read their
okay.
comment.
Yes, yeah, I want you to do that.
My name is Brandon Dar, and I live at 517 East 2700 South. The house directly east of the proposed Harvey plan. My house is 112 years old, so my worries are many. I will be speaking about a very important one. I'm referring to the alley on the north end of the Harvey that runs from 500 East to Park Street. In our case, it's the only access to our home and is already in disrepair. I understand and have no problems with making room for others in such a thriving city. Facts are the Harvey will already take up approximately half of the alley. Both sides of the alley will be vital access for construction materials and machinery. The inhabitants of the Harvey will also use both sides of the alley. It is unrealistic to assume that all of our neighbors will just use some of the alleyway. I propose we come up with a solution to take care of all of the alleyway with purpose and thoughtfulness to realize that it is worth it to address the alley as something that is going to be there for all to use safely and realistically for the foreseeable future. If the alley is not going to be used in sections by some residents, it will be used in its entirety by all who live on it. So that was a comment from Brandon Dar. We also have a comment from Stephanie Holmgren at 517 East 2700 South. While I appreciate many elements about the Harvey plan, I remain in strong objection of the decrease in setback, the increase in lot size, and increase in height. Excuse me. It's 100-foot long, 30-foot tall wall will stand 11 and a half feet from my 112-year-old home. My husband and I will never enjoy another spring or summer sunset from our porch or backyard after the Harvey casts its shadow over 95% of our property. But for today's meeting, I'll focus my objection on the proposed alley use. I am begging this commission to put the alley's condition and use at the top of the priority list and that you deny the Harvey's proposal as it currently exists. This alley is the only way for me and 3 of my neighbors to access our properties. Now this access will be shared with 14 homes and 1 business. This massive change in access needs better analysis and further discussion. Developers will tell you, as they told me, that they predict future residents of the Harvey will only drive on the half of the alley directly to the north of their property along 500 East as their entrance and exit point. In condition of approval number 4 of the staff report, the developer has already been compelled to pave in front of their property due to the current state of the alley. So why aren't they being compelled to pave the entire alley? The intersection at 500 East and 2700 South is already a busy one, and Harvey residents will take advantage of the East Alley access to Park Street to avoid the busy intersection. The Harvey's added traffic will be what creates the rapid deterioration of the entire alleyway. So again, why aren't the developers being compelled to pave the entire alley? If the city can't compel them to pave the whole thing, Will the city then take a vested interest in the alley and pave the rest of it themselves? Will it be added to their routes for snow plowing? What is to be the rule of the alley? Who has the right of way on this alley? Does it become a one-way? Will there be signs about illegal parking? Will they enforce compliance? Who is responsible for this alley? Until these and many other questions are answered, then this development should be denied. Thank you for your time and consideration. And again, that was from Stephanie Holmgren.
Okay, and given that you read in those comments that exceeded 2 minutes in length, I feel like we've given a fair amount of time. That's what I'm trying to say is that even though we can't overcome the audio for Steph and Brandon, in addition to the comments they had in our Dropbox, I feel like we all have a very good understanding of what their concerns are. So any other hands raised, Wayne? I don't see any.
I don't see any other hands, and I don't see, excuse me, any other emails that have come in since we started the meeting.
Okay, and I do see Steph and Brandon's latest note in the Q&A, so you are welcome. All right, with that, I'm going to close the public comment period. I actually think some of the things that were brought up are really more of a staff thing to address, but one thing for the applicant that the community council questioned was, would those bottom units become ADUs? And you can take a minute to respond to that if you would, please. David, Alec, or Tyler?
I'll speak to this just for less than a minute. Future owners of the properties are going to be subject to the exact same ADU rules that everybody else in the city is, and I do not believe that that's a permitted use in the CN zone. They are not considered separate rental units. It's simply a single residential unit that has a separate entrance at the bottom for flexibility's sake. Of the 5 that face 27th South, 3 of them are being completed with bedrooms, kitchenettes, etc. The intention is that we've met lots and lots of people who would like to have, space for their in-laws to stay for the weekend or things like that. So the idea is to add, privacy and flexibility to people's personal homes. That's essentially what's going on. They're not designed technically as separate rental units.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, I know you said this in your report that we can't compel them to do pave the whole alley. Will you just clarify the process by which a homeowner can petition or apply to vacate an alley, which is an option for any of those homeowners along that street? Yes.
Sure. The city does have a process for that. We do have an application that's on our website. So if you go to the slc.gov and then planning and then applications, there's an alley vacation or closure application. And that is something that they could submit. We definitely recommend that they talk with staff about that first and just kind of go over any potential issues and what they're thinking, what they'd like to kind of have happen with the property, that kind of thing. Also, an alley closure is something that would be reviewed by the Planning Commission, and then the decision on it would be up to the City Council.
Thank you. What is the city's process for making an alley one way? I do not know the answer to that one.
I do not know the answer to that either.
It's not crucial. I was just curious. So that's something that if the applicant and or the neighbors wanted to pursue, they could do that separately anyway with the planning division. So, all right, commissioners, any questions or comments at this time for the applicant or staff?
I would like to, it's Andres, Madam Chair. I would like to propose that question to the developers just to see what the response might be about taking care of that alley. If they might be willing to earn the graces of the neighbors that have this issue, especially with the little patios that on the south side that seem to take away some of the atmosphere that the neighbors had, for many years. Perhaps they might be able to respond to that.
Okay. David, Alec, or Tyler?
You can take that
This is
one.
Alex. Yeah, go ahead, Tyler.
Oh, tell me if you're on the same page as me, but my response to that would be that right now, a lot of the things that we've tried to do to meet the parking requirements and to make this a multimodal type of transportation project is it's the sort of thing where we've put a lot of our budget towards the parking stuff. The parking garage is an expensive item to build on site, and especially the automated parking system. In order to get all of the parking stalls required by the city, those are much more expensive than surface parking. So from a budget standpoint, we simply don't have the funds to do that sort of thing. It's the sort of requirement that would likely kill the project, although I definitely sympathize, and I feel like it's something that we would like to do. Having gone over the budget minutely on this project and doing all sorts of things like the additional brick on the facades, the automated parking systems, the all-electric HVAC systems. These are significant costs that we've incurred to try to create a better project. And as much as I agree with the assessment that it is something that would be nice to do, it's something that it's not on the budget, and we can't afford to do everything. So it's something that just probably can't happen on this project, as sad as that is.
Okay, thank you for that response. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm gonna kind of take it to the commission now. I'll pipe in a little bit here. I live with an alley behind my house that I have garage access to. And there's an LDS church 2-story with a parking lot right behind my house. They don't own the alley, but they pave the upper part and their parking lot, and then below that is parking for the Postal Service employees. So my alley is really active, and that part down there is not paved, and it never has been the whole 23 years I've lived here. So I have a half and half situation going on, and I have a very active alley given all of the uses with employee parking, residents. There's an apartment building just to the west that also many of the tenants use that for their parking. And we all seem to work out fine. It hasn't created any like environmental issues or even sharing the alleyway with all of them. So I think I have like a unique understanding of kind of how that plays out. And it hasn't been an issue for my neighborhood. That said, I know it can be a little hard. I did go out to this site and I drove the alley. It's in better condition than the west part of my alley that's not maintained. But 517 is they're the only ones using it within the block, within that part from 500 East to Park Street to access. But that is, they are using that to get to park in their backyard. And I don't think that would be prohibited. And you also have access via Park Street, as it's not a two-way or not a one-way at this time. So I think there may be some, some fear about what this could, because it is different. But it hasn't been an issue at all for my street. And I have a longer alley than you do. So just give that some consideration. I just wanted to pipe that in, that I did go check this out, and I have been thinking about it in relationship to the situation that exists behind my house. But with that, if commissioners have any other things they want to discuss or items they want to bring up, otherwise I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, please go ahead.
Based on the findings listed in the staff report, the information presented, and input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission approve the plan development and design review petitions PLN PCM 2021-01092 and PLN PCM 2021-001254 for the Harvey, subject to the following conditions. 1, final approval of the plan shall be delegated to planning staff to ensure compliance with the zoning standards and conditions of approval, including signage, lighting, and landscaping. 2, approval is for the specific items discussed and identified in the staff report. All other applicable zoning regulations and requirements from other city departments still apply. 3, the developer will need to record against the property an estimate of the costs for maintenance and capital improvements of all infrastructure for the planned development for a period of 60 years in compliance with 21A 55-110, disclosure of private infrastructure costs for planned developments. 4, the developer shall submit preliminary and final plats for review. 5, the developer shall improve the alley to the north along their property line as indicated on sheet C501 or as required by engineering. 6, the utility transformer shall be fully located in the rear yard.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion from Mike and a second from Adrian. Any discussion to that? Otherwise, let's take a vote. We'll go Amy,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Andreas,
I'll vote yes.
Adrian?
Yes, and I would just like to applaud the developers on the design and taking advantage of a somewhat difficult lot and coming up with a creative design solution.
Andra?
Yes, and I'm delighted it's all electric.
All right, thank you. That motion passes unanimously. So David, Alec, and Tyler, congratulations, and you can move forward on your project. Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for the public for participating. We'll move on to the last item on our agenda, well, for the public hearing portion. It's the Downland Townhomes General Plan and Zoning Map Amendments. This is going to be case numbers PLN PCM 2021-00717 and PLN PCM 2021-00718. And the planner for this tonight is Caitlin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the commission. I'm happy to be with you virtually this evening. These two items have gone before the Planning Commission once already. This came for a public hearing at the November 10th, 2021 meeting where it was tabled to allow the applicant and his team to kind of facilitate a discussion with staff and determine whether there was a more appropriate zoning to request for this area. So staff and the applicant and his team have met and we've discussed the project and have brought these items back to the commission for a recommendation to the City Council. So the applicant is requesting an amendment of the general plan map from low density residential to medium density residential. And this general plan map amendment is necessary to facilitate the zoning map amendment from R1 5000 residential to RMF 35. And just as a reminder to the members of the commission, the original zone which was proposed was RMF 45. This is the property in question. It is on the, southwestern corner of Westminster Avenue and 400 East. It is 1902 South, 400 East. And it was the former site of the Sears Mansion, which sustained substantial damage in the March 2020 earthquake. Since then, that building was unfortunately demolished and the lot now sits vacant. It is about a third of an acre or a little over 14,000 square feet in size, which is a substantial amount of land, especially in this area where the lots are a little bit smaller. We have a table here of potential land use changes, which would be newly permitted or newly conditional uses in the zone if the City Council does move forward with approving these map amendments. And the land uses that the applicant is currently looking at are the single-family attached dwelling units, or potentially the multifamily, depending on the number of units that they are looking to obtain out of this property. Additionally, we have a table with the potential lot and bulk changes. As you can see, there are some modifications to the setback and building coverage, and then of course the maximum building heights would increase from 28 feet for pitched roofs and 20 feet for flat roofs up to 35 feet in the proposed zone. So as I stated earlier, the Planning Commission has already held a public hearing and received multiple public comments for these applications. Following the commission tabling this item, staff has not received any phone calls or emails with additional public input. Again, as part of our noticing process, sign was posted on both street frontages of the property and a public hearing notice was mailed out. So as you can see in your staff report, staff has gone through the considerations that are outlined in the ordinance, and staff is making a recommendation that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation of both the general plan map amendment and the zoning map amendment for the Downland Townhomes development. And that is everything that I have in my presentation for you. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to take those. Otherwise, I will turn the time back over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Caitlin. Any questions from commissioners for staff at this time? Okay, hearing none. Let's see, we've got the applicant Paul Dowland, Tom Jolly, and John Davis. Who is wanting to speak?
I believe Mr. Dowland is just listed as Paul under our participants list.
Oh, okay, there he is. I couldn't see who was there. All right, Mr. Dowland, can you speak?
Yes.
All right.
So yeah, Mr. Davis and Mr. Jolly are not in attendance.
Okay,
Thank you
that's
for your
totally
guys'
fine.
time. And I think
Do you
Caitlin
need
covered.
presenter? Do you need presenter rights to give a presentation, or did you just wish to speak?
I think at this time, I think staff has seen through the last presentation the observation of time for everybody. I mean, I'm fine to move forward if staff is fine with that.
Yeah, go ahead. You can go ahead and give your comments.
So I just wanted to say thank you for the time and thank you for your consideration of the project. And I appreciate your patience in our coming back to staff and making the appropriate changes and things that needed to go forward. So I don't really have a lot to say. I know we've covered a lot of this in the last hearing, and I just wanted to say thank you again for your time. And if there's anything that I can answer specifically.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dowland. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant right now? Okay, hang tight. With that, I'll open the public comment period, and if any comments come up that it's appropriate for you to address, I'll bring it back to you after I close that. So go ahead and open the public comment period, and if you're in attendance and you wish to speak, I see a couple of hands raised. Go ahead and hit that hand button. In addition, you can email comments to planning.comments@slcgov.com in case we have any audio issues. But we'll go ahead. Is there anyone in attendance from the community council, Wayne?
No, I don't see that.
Okay, so Wayne will go ahead and do that when you are unmuted. If you would state your name for the record, and then you'll have 2 minutes. Go ahead, Wayne.
So Charlene, I moved you over to a panelist area that would actually allow you to speak. Unfortunately, it doesn't. Can you try to speak right now? If not, if you could look on your computer and look down at the panel where your name shows up, and if you see a little telephone down there, if you could maybe hit that and see if that would work.
I think you do have to hit the participants button first. It's a gray button.
There you
Now
go.
she has an audio.
There you go, Charlene. Go
Oh,
ahead.
okay, perfect. Hi, Madam Chair, thank you. And also Wayne, thank you for working out this technology. I just have a comment. I would like to thank you, Madam Chair, the commissioners and Ms. Tubbs for your time and judicious thought on the original application and the amendment, which I am in support of. I attended the November meeting. I live on Ramona, which is just around the corner from the proposed development. In light of the fact that Salt Lake City is growing and affordable housing is becoming more limited, I also want to thank the applicant for reducing the number of townhomes from 8 to 4 to preserve the nature of our residential neighborhood. So thank you for that. And I look forward to attending the next public hearing on the building plan. Thank you very much.
Charlene, would you state your name for the record?
Oh, yeah, sorry. My name is Charlene Kiuhara, Kiuhara.
Thank you. I did not want to butcher your last name, so thank you.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Next up is Doyle Buchanan. Go ahead, Doyle.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I attended the November meeting as well and commented, and I'm in favor of this development. I think I mentioned that in the last meeting that I walk by or run by it quite often, and I'm glad to see that we're getting some development. Over in Sugar House, have been getting development for the last 5 or even 10 years, and I'd like to see Liberty Wells benefit a little bit from some of the newer buildings that kind of help maintain our property values and bring good new residents into the neighborhood. So I think that's all I have to say. I am interested in seeing what the plans will look like for the building, but I'm glad that this is going ahead.
Great. If you would just state your name for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Doyle Buchanan. I live on Ramona Avenue, just half a block south of the proposed development.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan.
Okay, next up, Vincent Ragroski. Give me just a minute here. We need to see if we can make this work for you two. Vincent, if you could go on your computer screen and open up the hit the participant button. And
Can you hear me?
Vincent?
Yep.
Great. Perfect.
Yes. All right. My name is Vincent. I live on Westminster Avenue, just within sight of this property. And I hope they were taking design cues from the previous presenter, the Harvey. I really do like that building, the 90% brick facade and shorter height. I do think RMF 35 is a bit too dense, a bit too tall for the community. I would like to see RMF 30. I feel like that would preserve the views that everybody has in the community in Liberty Wells. And I would like to see less density on this lot. 4 dwellings is okay, but maybe 3 would be better. After all, like affordability is directly affected by increased density. So there's a correlation between increasing density and making things more unaffordable. So I wouldn't like to see that happen necessarily in the heart of Liberty Wells. And I do have a question, wondering if these are going to be rentals or if they're going to be for sale. Thank you.
Okay, and Vincent, I don't want to butcher your last name either. Could you state your full name for the record?
Yeah, Vincent Grabowski.
Okay, thank you so much for your comments. And I will pose your question later. All right, anybody else who wishes to speak, please raise your hand. Looks like we've got another one.
Is that Darlene? Okay, Darlene, give me a minute here. Can you speak now, Darlene? No, okay. Darlene, how about now? Okay, we still can't hear you. If you could look on your computer screen, look down and open up, if you see a participants button, click that, and then down at the bottom, hopefully by your name, there's a little phone button. If you can kind of navigate you around and click those, hopefully you can get this to work. And if not, Darlene, in the chat, we have put a call-in number. So if you want to go into the chat, then you can call in, and then we can try to bring you in from there.
You could also add your comments in the chat too, if you'd like.
True, we can read them. Okay, we'll stand down a bit to see if we can work through that. John, did you get any emails to read in at this time?
The only emails we got were from one of the was from Charlene, and she was able to speak.
Okay.
So we'll see if Darlene maybe calls in here in a minute. Sorry, Darlene. Madam Chair, I don't know if you want to maybe open up a discussion period with the Planning Commission, and then we can leave the public hearing open and then come back to Darlene.
Let's do that. I'll leave the public comment period open, but I'll bring it back to the commission in favor of time management. Give Darlene a few more minutes to try and either call in, send emails to planning.comments@slcgov.com, or type something in the chat, which is at the bottom right of your screen. All right, commissioners, any questions? Well, actually, I'll pose the question that Vincent raised for the applicant first. Rentals or ownership, not that you need to specify that in our decision making, but to answer that question from the public.
Yeah, we're not 100% sure, and it would depend on the number of units probably, and if it might be both. We might hold or sell.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions or discussion from commissioners for the applicant or staff? Which would be great, since we're still waiting to see if we can work out Darlene's technicalities.
I will address Vincent's comment, the member of the public comment. Thanks for that, Vincent. I just want to clarify that in terms of the correlation between density and rising prices, I'd be very careful about inferring that as causality, because what usually happens is you see rising land values and it then becomes worth developers' while to put in dense development. And what we've seen repeatedly, when you don't allow for more housing supply, the rise in home prices is actually exacerbated. So I understand that often the observation is, wow, this neighborhood is getting much more expensive. I also see it getting denser, but just be very careful about the counterfactual in terms of what the causal effect is of preventing density.
Okay, thank you, Andra.
Madam Chair, we did get Darlene she was able to email, so I can read that.
Okay, perfect. That's great. Let's go ahead and read that email into the public record, please.
Okay, this is from Darlene. I'm sorry, Darlene, if I have your Calfusi. Good evening, Planning Committee. I strongly oppose the development of 4 townhomes at 1902 South, 400 East. I'm interested in the height approval as we live directly across from the property and also the parking and activity it brings to the neighborhood. Would it be possible to put speed humps on the street to prevent speeding? Would like it to be approved for the lower height and for it to be 3-unit rather than 4-unit. Interested if this will be for rental or purchasing. We have actually approached Josh Hunt, the owner, to see about purchasing the lot to build a home for my elderly parents, but have not heard back from him. Warm wishes, Darlene Kafusi.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands raised by anybody new. And Darlene, thank you for sending the email, and we apologize for the technical glitches that often seem to be out of all of our control, but I'm glad we were able to get your thoughts down. So with that, I'm going to close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission. And I'll just again reiterate, tonight we are making a recommendation to the city council for the zoning map amendment and the text amendment. Whatever they actually do put on the lot isn't before us. We don't know what that is, so we can't really comment on the number of townhomes or whatnot there. And this is not your only opportunity to participate. We make a recommendation to the city council. They are the ultimate decider, and they will also have a public comment period to have your participation welcome at that point as well. So commissioners, any thoughts on this particular item, or I'm willing to entertain a motion?
Can I just review when we saw it before? The staff recommended that we forward a positive recommendation to change it to RMF 45. Is that right?
Yes.
And we were hesitant with that, so now it's changed to RMF 35. The request.
Sarah, do you want to pipe in on that to confirm that change? That's my understanding, but.
Sure. So because we got so much feedback from the members of the public when the original request for RMF 45 came through, staff did review the existing master plan of the neighborhood and the surrounding area, and at that point staff forwarded a negative recommendation of these requests, and the planning commission tabled the request at that time, and staff has worked with the applicant, and we've landed on RMF 35, which upon conducting that same review, staff has found that it's much more compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and is now making a positive recommendation for a positive recommendation.
You had a negative recommendation to RMF 45.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Then maybe we got the nail closer on the head this time with this one. Thanks.
Okay.
I made a motion last time and I was
You did.
rejected, so I am not doing it this time.
I'm willing to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Based on the information in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the planning commission forward a positive recommendation to the city council for the requested general plan map amendment from low density residential 1 to 5 dwelling units per acre to medium density residential 15 to 30 dwelling units per acre for 0.003 acres at approximately 1902 South, 400 East, and this is PLN PCM 2021-00717.
Second.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion from Adrian and a second from Andra. Go ahead and take a vote on this. Amy?
Yes.
Andra?
Yes.
Andreas?
I will vote yes.
Thank you. Adrian?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
You cut out. Will you say that again?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. John?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously, and congratulations. Your next step is the city council.
Thank
All
you.
right, that will
Madam Chair,
conclude.
I think we have to do the zoning map amendment too.
There weren't two motions in the box. Were there?
I see
Yeah,
two
they're on the
motions.
same sheet. Yeah.
There are two separate applications, one for the general plan map and another for the zoning map
I
amendment. So
looked
we,
for the motion sheet and I missed that second one. So thank you for no, I see it now. I got confused. Yeah, thank you. All right, we're halfway done with that. Anybody want to make the second motion?
I'll go ahead
make
and
the second motion.
Okay,
go
go
for it.
ahead, please.
Based on the information in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the requested zoning plan map amendment from R-1-5000 to RMF-35 for 0.33 acres at approximately 1902 South, 400 East. And this is PLN PCM 2021-00718.
Thank you.
Second?
Okay, thank you. I have a motion from Mike and a second from Andra. Thanks for catching that. Let's take a vote on this one. Mike?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Andreas?
I will vote yes.
Adrian?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And Andra?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Now you are really good to go on to the City Council as your next step. So thank you for coming back tonight. All right, that does conclude the public hearing portion of our agenda. We're now on to the education portion. And we have appeals and variances for Planning Commission training. I don't know who's taking the lead on this though, so.
I'm going to take the lead on this, Madam Chair.
Hey, Paul.
Wonderful.
Well, before you start, can I just mention, apologies for the technical issues tonight. We are going to meet tomorrow morning and figure out what's going on. It's been happening too much lately, and so we appreciate your patience and with the situation, but I think we can find a resolution.
Cool. Madam Chair, I don't know if you wanted to take a break, give people an opportunity to go get some snacks.
We are at 7:30. What does the commissioners think? Do you want to plow through? How long are you going to be, Paul?
Well, that's kind of up to you. We can talk as long or as little as you want to. There is a statutory annual training requirement of 4 hours, so I mean we can.
You're not taking that tonight, no.
I mean, I don't want to cut into your Olympic viewing hours. So
If
we can.
commissioners want to raise your hand if you want a break, I'll just take a little hand straw poll visually. Okay, we've got the majority who want a break. Let's take a 5-minute break, and we'll reconvene at 7:38. Thank you. John, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, wonderful. And I've got Amy, Mike. Andra, there you are. Adrian? Great. Okay, we're all back. So let's reconvene, and Paul, enlighten us.
I'll do my best. I don't know that I spend a lot of time enlightening anyone, but I will try. So Nick recognized the need for us to do some training so that everybody's getting their time in, and he asked for some ideas on what a good topic or topics would be. And I jumped in immediately with a response and said, I want to talk about appeals. Selfishly, this is my burden most of the time. Although Hannah and I have decided that if there's an appeal of a decision that was made in a meeting that we're covering, that person is going to handle the appeal. So if you're going to make bad decisions, make sure you're making them on the meetings that Hannah covers. And don't tell her I said that. Outline here, so if I sound like I'm reading from something, I am. So why did I pick this topic? And I'm going to curse myself, but over the last couple of years, we've seen a fairly significant number of appeals, and I don't really know what accounts for that. I've speculated at times that it's just because everybody's cranky. We're all stuck in our homes, and we don't have as many things as we can do right now as we could when we didn't have to worry about catching a virus. So we stay home, we're cranky, and we hate our neighbors or something. A significant number of the appeals that we've been dealing with have been the neighbor appeals. A few have been applicant appeals, but it seems like we've had a significant number of those third-party neighbor appeals lately. Currently, in case you're wondering, I have four items that have gone through the Planning Commission that have technically been appealed. Three of those are currently in district court. One of those, we had an appeal hearing on it, but another WebEx glitch, we weren't able to get the meeting recorded, so we're doing a do-over. And just maybe as a, I know that you all have busy lives, and you may not find this stuff as interesting as I do, but if you're interested in how the appeals work, what the arguments look like, what the subject matter usually is, the city has a YouTube channel where these meetings and most of our appeal hearings are posted, so you can go back and watch it after the fact. And I say that because after the fact, if you were to hop in on an appeal hearing while it's happening through WebEx, there may be some, I don't know, temptation for somebody to say, well, Commissioner Barry is here, so why don't we ask her why they made this decision? So I would encourage you to, if you're interested, to watch the appeals. But usually I think the best forum for that right now is YouTube. You could hop in to WebEx if you want. And I'm not going to tell you not to do that. I just think it would be better to watch something after the fact. If you have any questions on those, send me an email, give me a call, whatever. I'm happy to talk about those things.
So Paul, I just was wondering if you would go over like who decides who hears the appeal, And what's the time frame that people have to make an appeal, and what's been the outcome of the appeals? Have our decisions been overturned, upheld, or what? Because we don't get to hear any of that.
I think we probably need to do a better job of letting you know when there is an appeal, simply because one of the things that we ask you to do is to not have conversations about the matters that you make decisions on that are under appeal. Just because it's another opportunity for somebody to say, aha, Commissioner Lee said this. So let me tell you, the appeals that we have right now, Tomahawk Drive, that's the one that we're doing the do-over on. It was a special exception for building height, grading, I think building height and grading around the structure and the driveway. So I don't want to talk about that one because it is what it is. We have the Hines design review, the one that was appealed by the Save the Utah Pantages Theater group. That's in district court. We have property owner's name was Harvey. It was a planned development, and I forget, it was on 27th South. That one's in district court. That's been appealed by a neighbor. And then the strange one that is in district court that you saw, which was a legislative matter. I don't remember the address. It's AEMC.
Well, Paul, do they go through the appeals process, and then if they don't like the outcome, then they file it in district court? Or do they just skip the appeals and go to district court?
That's a great question, and I'm going to probably jump around here a little bit, and I encourage you to ask questions along the way, and that's okay. So 1945 South, 1300 East was the one. It was a rezone. Legislative matters, the items that you make a text amendment or a rezone amendment recommendation to the council on, those do not get appealed to our appeals hearing officer. After the city council makes a decision on those, an appeal goes directly to district court on those. And the reason is basically it's a policy decision, and it's a completely different standard. It's about the lowest threshold I can think of. The standard for upholding a legislative land use decision is whether the decision is reasonably debatable, as opposed to a decision that the commission makes as an administrative type decision. The standard on those is whether the decision was arbitrary and capricious or illegal. That's slightly tougher to defend. It's generally not difficult. So, Commissioner Barry, you asked me like 4 or 5 questions. I'm going to try to cover all these things. And I want to start with maybe the foundation. So when I responded to Nick and said, I want to talk about appeals, how we can avoid them, and how we can avoid the trouble that we sometimes have to address in those appeals. Hannah Vickery, who you all have met, at least through your computers, jumped in and said, I want to talk about administrative versus legislative decision-making. And the two of these mesh really well as far as this discussion goes. So there really are 2 types of things that the Planning Commission does. You get involved in administrative decision-making and legislative recommendations. And this should be obvious and seared into all of your brains. I'm confident that you're all aware of this, but why I want to talk about this is because it dovetails nicely into the conversation about appeals. So the legislative decision or the legislative matters that you review, you are not the final decision maker. They are not appealable. There's a consideration of factors but there's not a strict compliance with those factors. There are generally things to consider, and that's simply because when it gets to the city council, they have a tremendous amount of discretion. So there's really no need for the recommending body to have rigid standards to apply. And this is where it doesn't bother me if you say, I think this is terrible or this is great. Not really standards, but the kinds of things that you as citizen planners can be a little more vocal about your personal perspectives on these things. As opposed to administrative decision making, where you are the decision maker, your decisions are appealable, and this is all based on standards and standards that are in the code. Any decision that you make, we need to basically point to, does this meet what is prescribed in the code? Sometimes we don't like what's in the code, and that's okay, but you are still bound to make a decision based on what those standards are. Okay, so oftentimes in planning commission meetings, we hear commissioners express their opinions. We hear a lot of comments from the public, and I don't mean to do anything to marginalize comments made by the public, but the reality is, and this is something that should be apparent to you, and that is that the vast majority of comments made by the public on administrative matters do not make any mention of or include any substance that relates to standards. It's generally, we don't like this. This is going to ruin our neighborhood. There's going to be a safety concern here. And basically, this is not a time for a decision to be made based on popularity, based on emotion, based on whether we are concerned about somebody being disappointed. The fact is that the law is what protects you. And Commissioner Barry, you asked a question about how often are these things appealed, and how successful are we on these appeals? Well, the good thing is that you are all very good at making decisions, and I'm very good at defending them. Not to be that way, but the fact of the matter is we don't lose appeals. And as much as I really want to take a lot of credit for being this brilliant attorney, the law is written in a way that favors municipal land use decisions. There is a presumption in the law that the decision that you make is valid. And that presumption can only be overcome by an appellant showing that the decision was arbitrary, capricious, or illegal. So from the starting point, the appeal hearing officer, and if it goes to court, the judge, starts from the assumption that you have made a correct decision. That benefits me. It makes me look smart. Again, feel free to ask questions. Sure, and if you raise your hand and I don't ask or I don't point to you or whatever, it's because I'm reading from a document. So feel free to jump in. Go ahead.
Fair enough. This is super interesting, Paul. I really appreciate you taking the time to share this with us. I think in a previous meeting we had with you, you suggested that the cost to the appellant of appealing was quite low. And that was part of the problem. I guess I'm wondering, given that you win all of them, I mean, it still takes up taxpayer money to pay staff. It is probably not your favorite part of the job. Is there some way we can raise the cost of appealing these decisions?
An awesome question. Michaela, our assistant planning director, has been working on an effort to get the city council to raise those that appeal fee. So it costs $256 to appeal. That comes nowhere close to covering what the city allocates for my time, for the planner's time, but it clearly doesn't cover the cost of the appeal hearing officer, who would have to pay $100 and something an hour to hear these things. So it's certainly not a disincentive, and people often just want to be heard. And $256 isn't a lot for somebody to make some noise.
Yeah, so that's the other question. That's a really good thing about the wanting to be heard. I think part of the public hearing process may serve that function, and I never really thought about that. Somebody who runs a company was telling me that part of her job when she has an employee conflict is just to make sure that somebody feels heard and they don't take it to the next. I never thought about it, but that is good to hear, that is some of what they need to feel, and certainly we can try to, that's what they're trying to address. And the other question I was wondering about, though, was when we make unanimous decisions, does this change the probability that it appeals, or is it they don't seem to think any differently if it's unanimous versus a 4-2 or something?
I don't know how quantifiable that is, but it's certainly an issue that appellants raise. They will say, well, Commissioner Burrows disagreed, and she said, I know, it's all Amy's fault. Commissioner Burrows disagreed, and she said that she didn't think the building was too high. Those are the things that appellants will point out. I'm not telling you that you need to make unanimous decisions, because I think that would be problematic. I think we need a diversity of perspectives and opinions here, and it's okay to disagree. One of the things that's important, though, is that when you do disagree, that your whatever comments you make to express your disagreement are standards based, right? I'm glad you asked the question. I'm trying to avoid telling you that unanimous decisions are awesome, but it makes my job a little bit easier if we have a clean discussion, that the comments that are made are relevant, and the appeal hearing officer is not going to look at something and say, well, it was a 4-3 decision, so gosh, I don't know how this should go. The appeal hearing officer is still going to look at the standards, look at the record, and make a decision based on something other than emotion or popularity.
Can you talk a little bit about the importance of the record and what is actually reviewed on appeal?
Yes, the record is the most important thing. So let me just hop to some of those notes here. So what we're building to is how you make your decision, what it's based on. Obviously, I'm going to keep saying standards, because if you make a decision that's not based on standards, then I've got a little more work to do, and it can be uncomfortable. And let me say, just out of fairness, yes, the Planning Commission has had quite a few decisions appealed lately, but I would say what I've been battling the most lately is not decisions that are hard to justify. It's decisions that are based on bad code. We have some bad code. Going to acknowledge that right now. There are things, again, because I've got a current appeal that I don't really want to get into the details on. We have some code provisions, the last 2 appeals I've handled, where there are remnants of former regulatory schemes that were inadvertently left in the code that are not helpful. Things that when we made some text amendments years ago, we should have cleaned some things out, and we didn't. And hopefully we can catch those in the future. We're obviously well aware of them now. But just so you know, it's not because one commissioner or another is making a bad decision, or the commission as a whole. Most of the time, these appeals are just because somebody didn't like the outcome. And with some of these neighbor appeals, if any of the public is watching, I'm not going to be the most popular guy right now, but it's just sour grapes. They don't understand standards. They, I'm not going to be anybody's favorite person right now for saying this, but in all of the appeals I've dealt with lately that do not involve an attorney representing one of the sides, I'm dealing with Google lawyers, people who think that they understand standards based on the fact that they read something in a chat, or they read the code and they think they understand it, but they don't understand the entirety of the code, where there are presumptions that if there's an ambiguity in the code, we have to interpret that in favor of a land use applicant. This was something that the state legislature added to the code, I think about 5 years ago. Not really helpful, but it's what we're stuck with. And when we have an ambiguity, and these are generally appeals that you don't see in front of you. It's an administrative level, a staff level decision. We interpret the code one way. But one of the appeals that I'm dealing with now does have that element to it. And so we, it's a frustration of mine that we have bad code, but there's no way to write a perfect code. We can just take the things that we learn from these experiences and improve on them. Anyways, I told you I wasn't going to talk for an hour, and I'm going to try to get through this stuff. So one of the things that I want to avoid when we're making decisions, when we're doing the fact finding, when we're asking questions, the questions that we ask the staff are important. They need to be relevant. They need to be based on the standards again. One of the things that I've heard a lot, the question that comes up frequently, I think it's a reasonable question to ask, but it's not relevant. And that is, will these units be affordable? There's not a standard for affordability. And as much as Salt Lake City is really struggling to tackle a housing affordability problem right now, it's not something that you can make a decision on. And so it's really something that we ought to avoid asking, because it appears like we're making a decision based on whether it's affordable, whether, something outside of the standards. And there have been other questions asked and discussions had, and I can't really think of those off the top of my head. The affordability one is just one that I know comes up a lot. And, I roll my eyes, but I don't really get that concerned about that specific question. There are conversations that we get deep into where the issue is not relevant to the standard. Sometimes we talk about parking on issues where, they're asking for additional height, and parking is not part of that petition. And I'm not saying that the commission members are bad decision makers, because like I said, we have a very good success rate. Your findings and the motions you make, the decisions, are very defensible for me. It's sometimes I have to waste a little bit of time explaining, Commissioner so-and-so, yes, they did say this, and that wasn't helpful, but that's not the basis of the decision.
Yeah.
So in that circumstance, is it helpful when we have, 50 public comments about affordability, and to wrap up the public hearing, we say, we hear you, we understand affordability is an issue, but that's not before us. It's not within our purview.
Right.
We're going to make our decision based on the standards, blah, blah, blah.
100%. And I don't recall having had to do this lately. It seems like years ago, when we were having a lot of alcohol related uses, and neighborhoods were up in arms about a potential neighborhood bar being built near them, we would hear a lot of we would have an idea in advance on the conditional use that there were going to be a lot of concerns raised, and staff and the commission chair have been very good on those kinds of things, where we have an idea on a conditional use, to remind the public that, hey, the state legislature has tied our hands on conditional uses. If the reasonably anticipated detrimental effects of this use can be mitigated with reasonable conditions, we cannot deny it. And giving that speech at the beginning of the public comment and at the end of it, I think has been helpful to educate the public on those kinds of things. And yes, if we do have 50 public comments on affordability and the commission chair closes the public hearing and says, we've heard you, we recognize that affordability is a really important thing for the community. However, that's not a standard, and we're not allowed to make decisions on issues that are not part of the standards. If nothing else, it goes to show that the decision was made based on the standards. And I hope that when we make those comments, the public hears us. Now, I know that land use decisions are emotional, and people don't want to, they just don't want that house across the street, or, you know, that accessory dwelling unit that they don't like the neighbor and they suspect the neighbor is going to use it as a short-term rental. One of the comments we hear from time to time is that that neighbor is a bad person. We don't like that person. Obviously, the character of an applicant or whatever, that is, the character of a person is not a standard, and it shouldn't be considered. These are all things that should be obvious.
Yeah, it's
to you.
really helpful, Paul, in terms of how we address public comments, because I think there's a bit of a tension between making sure the public feels heard and maybe educating them a little bit about what the role of the planning commission actually is, that we're not, you know, the only way they can get resolution of the things they don't like about their neighborhood, and the fact that there's, you know, micro units going in and whatnot. And just, I think that that's sort of an education standpoint, as well as, you know, I think that happened a little bit tonight with the parking, where most of the public comments seem to be complaining about parking, which didn't seem to be at all part of what we were being asked to approve, and yet that seemed to be an issue. So this is really helpful in terms of how we kind of navigate that.
Yeah, and you know what? I have to say I'm grateful. This makes my job easier that we have Commissioner Chairperson Barry as our commission chair, and Brenda before her, and Adrian before her. We having good, I guess, explanation to the public makes things so much easier for us. They're not going to hear you all the time. Promise you that. You know, they don't want it. They don't want this in the neighborhood. But saying it out loud will reach some people. They'll get it. And you know, like I keep saying, standards. My heart skips a beat when there's a public comment where somebody actually mentions standards. When was the last time you heard a public comment mention the standards? It's infrequent. It really is. So, and that's one of the things, and I am, again, skipping around, and Wayne will tell you from a conversation we had an hour before planning commission meeting tonight, I really do have a hard time staying on track, sometimes get into tangents, but that's just, the motions that we make, it's something I've mentioned to planning management recently, and it was, again, something that popped in my head as a result of an appeal, is that the motion language we use is based on the staff report, public comment, materials presented in discussion, whatever. Based on public comment isn't always an accurate reflection when making the motion, right? Because oftentimes the public comment is not standards-based, or it's in opposition to the motion that you're making. So one thing, and I'd like to tighten up motions in the future when we have some time to sort of think about this. And I apologize for not having a PowerPoint or anything tonight. We're in the middle of the legislative session, and I'm a mess right now. So sorry that you're just having to look at my face while having this conversation. But one thing I'd like to do in the future with motions is clean up the language a little bit on the recommended motions, where instead of saying based on public comment, I would like to have the motion say something to the effect of, with consideration given to public comment. That way, there's not an argument that the decision actually was based on something that was in opposition or irrelevant, to be honest. So, and
To the
as far as
extent that staff can like standardize our motions, that helps us tremendously because we don't think on the fly when we're doing, and when we have to, it takes some thought and then we get it wrong. So,
what are you talking about, Commissioner Bell? You're good at this.
it's hard. It's hard.
It is.
And
It is, and particularly.
I'm
Go
just
ahead.
going to pipe in and say that for some commissioners, it can be intimidating to have to come up with
yes
an alternative parts to emotions when we're trying to modify some of it, and that can be intimidating for some. So, any help on that to kind of make it more universal so that we all feel comfortable to do that would be helpful. And
it is.
As we're debating it, in discussion, I think it would be helpful to make sure to get your input that we're actually formulating a motion when we have to on the fly that would pass muster, or if you have some suggestions, if there's a way to enlighten us mid-motion, mid-discussion of motion, that I think that would be helpful to the extent you can.
I totally agree with Adrian. And I don't think any commissioner, I'll just speak for myself, but I'll blanket statement. I don't think any of us would take umbrage if you pipe in and say like, oh, wait, you need to kind of think about doing it this way, because we want to make it sure that it's correct and legal and all that. So, I think we would appreciate your input.
I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. If somebody makes a dopey motion on a legislative item, I'm generally not going to care because it's not appealable. I'm so selfish here, right? That's what I care about, is whether I have to do this unpleasant work of having to argue with folks who are upset. I have in the past, and I try to be mindful of all of the elements of your motions. The difficult motions are the ones where you are going against the staff recommendation to deny an application. So the staff reports, the motions that staff gives you, they're really good about saying, because it meets all of the stuff, and basically you are adopting the findings of the staff report. Staff has laid out why all of these standards have been met, and we're good. When you disagree with a staff report and the findings in there, it does become a little more challenging, because you then need to step back, look at what the standards are, and identify the specific standard or standards that you think that the application fails to meet. And that's where we can help you with those motions. And don't hesitate to ask. We're more than happy to guide you through. If you disagree with staff's finding that this proposed development activity is compatible with the adjacent neighborhood, we'll help you walk through that. And please don't, like I said, don't hesitate to ask. Those are the tricky ones. And just to go on another tangent here for a moment, I'm going to use Landmark Commission as a good bad example. I'm going to pick on them because they're not here. They in the past have had struggled with motions to deny things. And I'm not kidding you when I tell you that twice I had a member of the Landmark Commission make a motion to deny with conditions. Absorb that for a second. We're going to deny this, and here are the conditions that you have to meet. Well, so the second time it happened, I said, so Commissioner, if they don't meet those conditions, is the application then approved? Denials are hard because you then have to formulate your own ideas. Sorry about that. Sorry to pick on the Landmark Commission. Where was I? Motions.
That's going to be my next motion.
Please don't. So
I'm gonna go back and listen to all of the talks you give to the Landmarks Commission to see what you say about Commissioner Burrows there.
Oh man, I'll be honest. I don't pick on Planning Commission when I'm talking to Landmark Commission. I don't know who's watching right now, so I'll just leave it there.
I bet that's what you tell all the commissions.
So I generally represent and defend Landmark Commission and Planning Commission. And right now, if we're being honest, the Planning Commission has more things that I'm dealing with that are appealed. None of those have merit. But Landmark Commission stuff is just different. I'm just getting into there so I don't hurt anybody's feelings or get myself in trouble. Okay, so our typical motion, we mentioned the file number, and then based on staff report, materials presented, all that. Findings, yeah, okay, so sorry, I'm just going through my outline here. Hold off on making or on discussion on a motion until after there's a second. These are just process things. And I would encourage you to regularly review the policies and procedures for the commission. Just, it's good to stay fresh on something. And there was an issue, and maybe I'll pick on Brenda because she's not here. There was an issue in a planning commission last year where I jumped in and I said, Chairperson, under your policies and procedures, the applicant should have an opportunity to respond to the public comments. And she said, well, no, they don't. They don't get to do that. It's in the policies and procedures. So we want to make sure that we're following those. And a footnote to that, the policies and procedures themselves are imperfect and need a little cleanup. We've discovered some things in the last year and we've had you adopt some changes. Just a recommendation to stay fresh on that stuff.
And just to let everyone know, those are in the Dropbox at all times. So you can, if you're looking for fun reading, you can go get them at any time.
It's not fun reading. It's not fun reading, but if nothing else, motion processes, it's helpful to stay sharp on that stuff and know things like the applicant does actually have a policy-based opportunity to respond to public comment. And there's stuff in there about not engaging in a debate with the public and whatnot. Okay, so sorry for all of this. So we know we make decisions based on standards. If you take anything away from tonight, you know that I'm a broken record on this. So Chairperson Barry, you asked me to tell you a little bit about our hearing officers. And I think Maureen may be the only commissioner who served with two of our former planning commissioners who are now appeals hearing officers, and that's Matt Worthland and Mary Woodhead. And they're fantastic, and it's really helpful for them to have that planning commission experience behind them. Now, they're also both attorneys, and that's something that I think we would never consider somebody for an appeals hearing officer who isn't an attorney. And it's just because it is the land use law and the standards are so nuanced and so technical that it's not that we don't trust non-attorneys. It's just that we're going to have a better time defending decisions when they're made by attorneys. And then we have a third hearing officer who's Craig Call. He was Utah's first property rights ombudsman, and he has a wealth of knowledge as well. And sometimes I serve as an appeal hearing officer for other cities, which is kind of fun.
Is that a term that they serve, or is it unending until they decide to quit?
It is a term that they serve, and I don't remember if it's 2 4-year terms like planning commissioners. I think it's 2 5-year terms. Craig Call is our oldest serving hearing officer. He was the first one appointed when we dismantled the Board of Adjustment. And I would have to say I have a high degree of confidence in each of those hearing officers. Don't always agree with them. And sometimes they've made decisions that I think could be challenged. But they're all very good at what they do, and I trust their expertise. To answer an earlier question, when the planning commission makes a decision, a person or entity who wants to appeal that decision has 10 days from the day that the written decision is issued. That's the shortest period of time that the law allows us to prescribe, and I'm glad that we do, because when you have a land use approval and you want to move forward with construction, the more time that one of these appeals can linger, the more costly it can be for the developer, the more uncertainty. And to be honest with you, oftentimes appeals are brought by neighbors, third parties, or whomever, simply to cause delay to legitimate development projects. So by shortening that to 10 days is what I think is in everybody's best interest, except for the person bringing the meritless appeal. Quick resolution is best.
How much longer after that, Paul, do you have to decide on the appeal?
So we generally will hear those within 2 months. Sometimes it's a little bit longer based on the availability of the parties. Sometimes it's within a month. Oftentimes it just kind of depends on who can be available. If my workload allows me to start writing a brief right away, there is a code provision that says that we're supposed to hear those within 180 days or they're dismissed. But there's some question as to whether we could enforce that if the delay is the city's fault or something out of the control of the appellant. And then once the appeal hearing officer makes their decision, if any party wants to challenge that decision and appeal that to district court, they have 30 days from the date that written decision is issued.
And the developer really cannot commence construction until it's decided?
They can.
Okay, they're just
depending on if the land use application was approved and it's a third party appeal, a neighbor appealing this, the developer can proceed. They do so at their own risk, and there is a possibility that an appealing party may ask the appeals hearing officer or the court to stay the matter while the appeal is pending, and they can do that. It doesn't happen often. I haven't seen it yet. I know it has happened in other cities, but generally we have a strong belief in the validity and legitimacy of your decision and the Landmark Commission decision and the decisions made at the staff level. And our hearing officers respect that. And if there's, there may be a public interest reason why we wouldn't want to allow construction to move forward, but I haven't encountered one of those things yet, or the appellant hasn't asked. And I'm not going to mention specific things right now because there may be one or more pending items in the court right now. Let's see. if you want me to shut down, feel free to just say, hey, we're tired, we've had enough, you want to go watch the Jazz game.
Should I start timing you? You have 5 minutes left, Paul. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, this is fun. So the appeal hearing officer, like I said, they're going to make a decision based on standards. Their standards a little bit different than yours. They generally look at arbitrary, capricious, and illegal. And their decision is based exclusively on what's in the administrative record. So that means that everything that was presented to the Planning Commission, all of the emails, all of the testimony, the drawings, all of that stuff, the conversation that was had, that is the only thing that the appeal hearing officer can consider. When I'm dealing with an appeal and a party starts arguing that, oh, well, I heard this thing my neighbor said that was not part of the discussion before the commission, I jump in, I say, Mr. Worthland, Ms. Woodhead, Mr. Call, this is not in the record. You cannot consider this, and this part of the conversation needs to stop right now. And I try to do it in a polite way, which is wonderful because it means there's no. If any of you have ever been part of litigation, there's never any interrogatories. There's no depositions, no subpoenas. It's just what's already been presented to you, and that's locked. Can't hear anything else. Makes things easier for me and the litigators in my office who have to deal with these matters in court. So when the hearing officer does make a decision, and I don't think anybody, I think Andres may be one of the more senior members of the commission. I don't think anybody on the commission has been here when this has happened. So the hearing officer has options here on what they do with the decision. They can deny the appeal, and they can grant the appeal. And if they grant the appeal, in nearly every circumstance, what follows next should be that they remand that matter to the Planning Commission. So if the hearing officer agrees that the commission acted in an arbitrary and capricious or illegal way, they should send that back to the commission to make a correct decision. The last time this happened was on a temporary overflow shelter. There was an appeal brought by the then owner of the Rio Grande Cafe. And for us, it was a learning opportunity. We didn't list all of the elements of a conditional use in the staff report, and thus the commission didn't consider all of those. And basically, it got kicked back to the commission to make a correct decision, a complete standards-based decision. None of you have seen that, unless I'm wrong. I don't think Andres or Maureen were on the commission at the time we had that one come back. I could be, again, wrong, but it's been a really long time. Again, that's due in large part to the good decisions that you make and the fact that the law presumes that you made a good decision. I'll try to wrap this up real quick. I think I've said the record is important, the law and standards, all of that. Everything really needs to point to what is in the code. Again, that's just another way of saying standards. Conditions need to be relevant. They need to be something that you can tie a standard to a standard if you're approving with a condition. Same as denials, all need to be based on relevant elements. I beat that dead horse. Are there any questions? Specific types of things that get approved or get appealed? Conditional uses don't get appealed all that much, simply because I think that people who would appeal those recognize the fact that it is extremely difficult to deny a conditional use. The Planning Commission has done it in the past. And on one of those, the hearing officer actually upheld the decision. And we can do this another day and talk about those conditional use standards, but essentially it was in that case, the reasonably anticipated detrimental impacts of this use as it pertains to this location. And that's critical in a conditional use, particularly if you're going to deny one. It has to be something about that conditional use specific to this location is going to create these detrimental impacts that cannot reasonably be mitigated. Happened once, and it was upheld.
Paul, was that a brouhaha?
That was brouhaha.
Ah, okay.
It's an alcohol-related use just west of Foothill.
So that was a while ago.
That was a while ago.
It was a long time
That was a
ago.
while. Yeah. We've gotten pretty good at this. And I think that, over the years, like I said, we've learned from mistakes and refined things to the point where your decisions are usually very, very easy to defend. Occasionally, like I said, if you're curious and you want to watch one of these, or we do have on the website a link to all the materials when we have appeals. Sometimes I will have to cite to the actual commission discussion and say, Commissioner Bell made this comment, Commissioner Gant made this comment. It was relevant to the standards. So if you want to hear us say good things about how smart you are and all that, it's interesting.
I'm definitely typing in from now on. Then I want to watch that.
Hey,
Well,
not
Paul can be
not
pretty
to
snarky,
age
too.
myself or anything, but because you said brouhaha was a long time ago, but I was a lender on that deal. How about that?
Full circle for you.
Interesting. Well, yeah,
Full circle.
full circle.
Paul,
There was one thing.
taking
Sorry,
your
there was one
time.
thing I wanted.
Let's wrap
Yeah,
it
I
up.
know. Yeah, sorry. One thing I wanted to mention. I did sort of hit on something, but not as completely as I wanted to. It's really important that you don't express how you feel about a project, how you think you will vote in advance of that vote. We've had to disqualify some commissioners in the past for those statements. And like I said earlier, that also holds true until the appeal period has expired. It could show a bias.
I'm noticing, this is a complete aside, but I'm just looking through our folder for tonight, and I am noticing that the meeting minutes for January 26th that we approved tonight, I can't find them. I can see the meeting minutes for January 12th. I can't find the meeting minutes for January 26th.
They were in my Dropbox. I've noticed sometimes, like I'll say to staff, like it's not here, and they can see it. So it is in my Dropbox, but sometimes I think Dropbox glitches, and I've noticed that other people won't have access to it, but I can get it, or I don't, but staff does. So.
Amy, I have a co-author that I just checked is trying to upload 26 gigabytes of data. Let me fix my Dropbox. Sorry about that. My apologies.
No, but it happens. It does happen.
Pardon me?
It does happen.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. That was my
Yeah,
bad.
I want to make a note. That was not a capricious or illegal or fraudulent vote. There was nothing wrong with that vote.
Sure.
Okay.
That
All right.
Dropbox situation actually does happen. I don't know what it is. I had it happen a few weeks ago where for some reason I could see one folder out of all of the projects. So I don't know what it is. Sometimes it just glitches, like Amy said. So it's a good chance that, it wasn't.
Yeah, it often comes up in our pre-meeting, Wayne, when I'm like, you don't see it, and I'm like, I do, or vice versa. So we know it happens. But I did have it in my Dropbox. It was accessible. Okay, Paul, are you good? Are you done?
I hope so.
We've had an hour off of our required
We'll
2-hour
round up.
education.
We'll round up to an hour. If anybody has any questions about appeals, If you want to sit in on one, cool. Log in WebEx under a fake name. So nobody's tempted to ask Commissioner Barry to explain why the commission voted this way. One thing I do want to say, just wrap up. When you make a decision as a commission, the commission's decision is the majority or whatever it is, whatever your motion is, the motion that passes is what I defend. If somebody here has a disagreement, and that's fine, you can have a different opinion, that's fine. I'm not defending the differing opinion. And it's important for you to know that if you disagree with the commission's decision, that still is the commission's decision. And hopefully you can accept that if you have a differing viewpoint, and you won't show up to a city council meeting or an appeal hearing and say, the rest of my colleagues are wrong. Officially, that is the commission's decision, what was voted on. So anyways, feel free to email me, call me, whatever. We'll talk more about this stuff. There was the video on, if you want some fun, the video of the Hines design review appeal is about 45 minutes long, and really all you need to watch is the last 10 minutes where the applicant's attorney is unprofessional and the appellant's attorney completely unravels, and it's messy, and I'm just sitting there trying not to make faces. So it's entertaining if nothing else.
Well, I might have to watch that. I miss, having you in person where I can just glance over and see you not try to make faces. Now you get to.
I know, this is the best part of being virtual, is I have my camera off.
Drop a link in the chat. Come on.
Thanks, Paul. I think that is very helpful, and I always hope that commissioners know that a robust discussion is always favorable, and we talk through our thoughts and our ideas, and that it is okay to disagree with staff. There's nothing wrong with that, but we do have the added burden as planning commissioners that we need to tie those to a standard and articulate why we're differing, why we think that threshold wasn't met, but that's our job. That's what we do. So I appreciate
that. Thanks for all your good work.
And thanks, Paul. It's nice to know that you're there, and please do pipe in when we're trying to make motions to make sure that they're good.
Happy to do that. And again, if you need to make a bad decision, make sure it's when Hannah's here.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind.
Thank you. She needs to work.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate all your patience and participation tonight, and this meeting is adjourned. So have a good evening.
Thank you.
Take away all the restrictions. Take away all the regulations. What do you get? Freedom